Check, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Patrice Tony. I'm one of the assistant city managers for the city of Winston-Salem, and thank you all so much for coming out and for your interest in helping us provide input on the next police chief. Before we get started, I would like to recognize our mayor and city council members. So if you all can stand, Mayor Allen Joins, Mayor Pro Tem Denise Adams, Councilmember Barbara Burke, Northeast Ward, Robert Clark from the West Ward, Annette Scipio, East Ward, Councilmember James Taylor, he is the chair of our Public Safety Committee, and Larson, John Larson. Stand up, John Larson. Kevin Mundy. Okay. And to acknowledge our city manager is here as well, Lee Garrity. Any other elected officials in the house tonight? Okay, Alex Bohannon from the school board is here tonight. Thank you, Alex. And my colleague, Aaron King, he's another assistant city manager. Hey, and Ben Rao. Y'all stand up. Y'all should be in shock. Okay, so we want to get started for what we are here tonight for. These are our four finalists for police chief of Winston-Salem. This is a huge opportunity. This is a huge job, and you all are here because you know how important this position is for our community. I would like to introduce them. We have on the far end, Assistant Chief William Penn. We have Chief Scott Booth. He is from Danville, Virginia. We have Assistant Chief Manny Gomez. And we have Assistant Chief, I'm sorry, what's your name? Weaver Wilson. I'm sorry, I was having a blank. That's Wilson Weaver. Wilson Weaver. How did I forget? I know him very well. And he's been in this community for a long time, 38 years to be exact, as in the Winston-Salem Police Department. So thank you, Weaver. I'd also like to introduce our community panel. And so in this process, we had an input session last Thursday at St. John CME Church. The community was able to come and tell us what they would like to ask the police chief. We also got some online questions. I got some phone calls, and so people gave input on what they would like to ask these finalists. And so the panelists tonight will be the ones to ask the questions of our finalists. There will be no opportunities from the floor to ask questions. And so tonight we have on our far right is Dr. Keith Vereen. He is the president of our Ministers Conference of Winston-Salem and vicinity. We have Mr. Andy Hagler. He is a director of our Mental Health Association of Forsyth County. We have Addison Truzzi. She is the president of our Winston-Salem Youth Advisory Council under our Human Relations Department. We have Vivian Perez Chandler. She is a community advocate and helps out the city in many ways. And then we have Pastor Robert Leake III. He represents the Coalition for Neighborhood Association Presidents. And so this is a very diverse panel. They represent so many segments of our community, and so they will be the ones to ask the questions for this evening. So we will get started, and there will be a series of general questions that we will start with that each candidate will answer, and I will be cutting your neck off when you talk too long, just so we can get to the questions. So our first question will be asked by Addison.
Well, hello.
And talking to the mic, and we need to project.
Well, hello. I'd like to give my first question to Mr. Penn. Why do you want to be the next chief of police of Winston-Salem, and what is your favorite aspect of police work?
Thank you for that question.
Why would I like to be the chief of police for Winston-Salem? Because I'm invested in this community. I was born here, I've been raised here, my family's here, and I've raised my son here. So I love this community and I love this agency. But one other thing I'd like to tell you, and it's an honor to me. A lot in the community have asked me to be the chief of police. They asked me to put in for this position. Some of my colleagues have asked me to put in for this position. And I don't know if there's many more honors higher than that, than people telling you, I want to follow you, I'll follow your lead. So that's why I'd like to be the chief of police for this fine city, Winston-Salem.
Chief Booth.
So who wouldn't want to be the chief of police in Winston-Salem? That's the better question. This is a great community, and this is a community that offers more opportunities than challenges, I would say. I've been in policing for 28 years. I policed a couple different communities, and I would say that every community that I've been a part of, I would like to think that I've left it better than I found it. I would love to do the same thing here, working with the community. You ask me what I love most about my profession, the same thing I've loved from day one in policing was working with the community to make things better, whether it's reducing gun violence, whether it's dealing with other the very complex issues that we have in a city like Winston-Salem. Working together, we can make it better. And as the chief of police here, I would love to think that we could build a collaborative problem-solving model to make things better. So thank you for your question. Appreciate that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Manny Gomez, and why would I want to be the police chief here in Winston-Salem? Much like Chief Penn, I'm invested in this agency. I know from the bottom of my heart that the Winston-Salem Police Department is the best law enforcement agency in the country. I'll say that again. We are the best law enforcement agency in this country, bar none. I see it day in and day out when I travel to other police agencies and see just the level of policing that they do compared to ours is very much different. I'm not a native of Winston-Salem. I'm from Brownsville, Texas, but I tell everybody I grew up in Winston-Salem. I came here in January of 1999. Today, as a matter of fact, is my 24th year of service with the Winston-Salem Police Department. I love this agency, I love our officers, and I believe that I can lead from the front. One more thing, I'm sorry. Why do I love this profession as a whole? I love to help those populations, the elderly and the children. When I help the elderly and the children and they are in need and we give them a helping hand, I go home and I can go to sleep just fine.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm W.S. Weaver II. I'm a native of Winston-Salem. I joined the Winston-Salem Police Department in July of 1984. I've been eligible to retire since 2012, but I've not left because I love serving my community. I enjoy all aspects of police work. I am your assistant chief over the Patrol and Special Operations Divisions. You know Patrol Division, the women and men that are answering the 911 calls for service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our Special Operations Division is the division that has what we call all of our toys. That's the SWAT team, the K-9 unit. The guys that ride the motorcycles, we call them the Traffic Enforcement Unit. We have a DWI task force as well as park rangers, and we also do all of the special event, both planning and staffing of those special events. So keep in mind that every year we have the Carolina Classic Fair. This past year we had Paul McCartney that came and sang at Wake Forest Truist Stadium. We also had the National Black Theater Festival. So I enjoy all of the planning that we need to do. I am committed to Winston-Salem. I am committed to serving the citizens of Winston-Salem. And in fact, I am so committed to Winston-Salem that I already own property in New Evergreen.
Thank you. Okay, Pastor Robert Leak has the next question.
Yes, good afternoon. What are some of the specific roles in law enforcement that you have experience in?
I'll go ahead and start. on the last question, I forgot to tell you what's most fun about what I enjoy most about Winston-Salem. It's the people. It's you all. It's the people I work with. But to this question, I don't know if many of you know this, but I was born in Rolling Hill Apartments right here in Winston-Salem, all right? And I also grew up on Oak Ridge Drive in a place affectionately known as The Hole. Now, the first time I ever told people I lived in The Hole, they said, "Oh my God, you can't call your birthplace that." I said, "No, it's affectionate, it's all good." I worked in patrol. I've worked patrol in all 3 districts. In every section of this city, I've worked it. I have extensive experience in working narcotics, both as a detective and as a field commander. I was the recruiting sergeant, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I served as a recruiting sergeant. You might have seen my mug on the campus of Winston-Salem State. I've also been a district commander of District 1, which is downtown and the northwest section of town. And I've been an assistant chief bureau commander of the Support Service Bureau, which is composed of our training, our recruiting, our communications, records, and IT. I currently serve as the Investigative Service Bureau Commander, where I supervise the detectives who are out here working so hard. So as you can see, I've been around here in this agency.
All right. So a couple things. Once again, Scott Booth. I'm the one outsider up here. So I'll take you through my career. So I started in policing in 1996 in Richmond, Virginia. It's a city very similarly sized to Winston-Salem of about 230,000 people. I started off as a patrol officer in the Highland Park, the north side area of Richmond. As an undercover officer, I was a detective in vice and narcotics there. As a sergeant, I led the narcotics unit. I led street and gun and drugs unit. I was the recruit training sergeant. I was a sector commander as a lieutenant. I was a precinct commander and a watch commander and the commander of the Special Investigations Division as a captain. And then as a major, I worked directly for 3 different chiefs. We changed chiefs a whole lot in Richmond. I had 6 of them during my time there, during my 20 years. 3 of them I worked directly for as a senior level leader. I was in charge of patrol operations for the city of Richmond, and then I was in charge of internal affairs or the Office of Professional Responsibility. Left there after being recruited from a former chief of mine, Brian Norwood, to go be his chief in the DC area where I stayed for 2 years. I left there for a brief stint in the federal government, hated it, sorry, I missed being a part of a community. Danville, Virginia was looking for a chief in 2018 when young people were getting killed there on the regular. Every weekend we had folks getting killed there. I'm sitting in Charlotte, I got excited to go there and be a part of positive change and bring the community together and make it better. And I've been there for 5 years. I got a lot of my Danville folks here in the house tonight. I certainly appreciate you. Big Robert, Project Imagine, thank you for being here, for the support. My encompassing purpose in policing from day one as a patrol officer to a chief of police is to make the community better. And for y'all to be here tonight and support me, for one of my detectives, Taekwon, stand up please, sir. For one of my detectives to be here, who I recruited, who is also the elected school board chairperson, it means a lot, Taekwon. Regardless of how this job goes, thank you for your support, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey guys, so Manny Gomez, I started working here as a police cadet. So as a police cadet, I was employed while I was in college. So I got to see the police department while I was attending college. It was a program that the police department started to recruit individuals that they thought or saw some ability to be a police officer. I was thankful that they recruited me, and I came to work at the police department as a police cadet. I have a vast amount of experience. I've worked in every component of the police department that the police department has to offer. So I started off as a cadet, then I went out to patrol. I worked as a patrol officer. After that, I worked on our foot patrol, which is a concentrated effort in certain communities, addressing quality of life crimes. From there, I went to our Special Investigations Division, our Vice and Narcotics Unit, working undercover operations and coordinating multiple types of operations with numerous agencies from the federal government to state agencies, coordinating all that internally and externally. From there, I pulled a stint in our Criminal Investigations Division. I was assigned to our Robbery Division, where I investigated robberies and homicides. From there, I was promoted and went back out to patrol. I also pulled a stint in our SWAT team. So I worked in our Special Operations Division as a sniper and worked there from 2017 until 2020 when I was promoted to the rank of captain. So I've got extensive experience in dealing with high-risk, high-level operations and dealing with those type of high-risk situations. I was promoted to sergeant and worked out in the field, and then I worked as a sergeant over our street crimes unit. Shortly thereafter, I was asked to serve in our Professional Standards Division as an investigator. From there, I was promoted to the rank of lieutenant. I worked as a field commander out on patrol. Then I pulled a stint in the office of the Chief of Police, working as the staff liaison for the chief, where I coordinated our community resources unit's operations and worked as our PIO at the time, our public information officer. We didn't have one of those when I was in that job, so I coordinated that through a pretty contentious time in 2020, ensuring that our messaging that was going out to our community from the police department was proper and you guys were informed of what was going on. From there, I was promoted to a captain, and I was placed over our Professional Standards Division, where I was in charge of our internal affairs and our personnel management. Internal affairs is where citizens go to file complaints where they are not content with the actions taken by a police officer. We believe in procedural justice. That means that we treat the citizens fairly, and we also treat our police officers fairly. We want the truth of the matter as to what happened. After there, the Chief of Police, Katrina Thompson, promoted me to the rank of Assistant Chief, and she assigned me to the Criminal Intelligence Bureau. That is a new bureau where we house our real-time crime center, and it's a hub for all our technology that's coming into this police department. Along that, we also house our Special Investigations Division, our Firearms Investigation and Intelligence Division, which is comprised of our Gun Crime Reduction Team, our Gang Unit, our Violent Firearms Investigation Team, our National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, and the drone program that comes out of our Real-Time Crime Center. As you can see, this is a pretty tall task with this bureau. We're doing the best that we can to try to reduce crime through intelligence-led policing, which is the new model that we're using to address all of these shootings that are occurring in Winston-Salem. So I have a vast amount of experience, and I feel that I am ready, because of that experience, to lead this department. Thank you.
So good evening again. My professional specialty is the response to, mitigation of, and recovery from all hazards in all weather conditions. I've been assigned to the Field Services Bureau, Patrol Division, or Special Operations Division for the vast majority of my career. And I've done that by choice. That's because I want to be responding to those crises as they're happening in our community and be able to make sure that they're being handled as professionally as possible. With that, once I was in Special Operations Division the first time, and I've been there 3 times, I was assigned as one of the canine handlers, and I actually started the patrol canine program that you see today with our canine officers out there. I was also assigned to the SWAT team at that point in time, and so I've been involved in high-risk operations too. With that, I've done a stint as an investigator also in the Professional Standards Division, where we maintain the professional standards of the Winston-Salem Police Department, conducting those internal investigations, administrative investigations on our personnel that we're having complaints from the community at large with. So I have that experience. Once I came out of the Professional Standards Division, I went back to Patrol Division, and I've been serving there and was promoted 8 years ago into the position that I'm in now, which is the Assistant Chief over the Patrol and Special Operations Division.
Next question is by Andy Hackler.
Good evening, and let's start with Assistant Chief Weaver and go down the line, shake it up a little bit. If you are selected as the new Chief of Police, what new initiatives would you bring to our city to reduce crime, engage citizens, build trust, and support community programming?
Sure. So keep in mind that for the city of Winston-Salem, our city motto is Urbs Condita Duivando, a city founded upon cooperation. With that being the case, I enjoy collaborating with all of our citizens in all of our neighborhoods so that we are able to go out and have long-term solutions to some of the crime problems or other issues that are occurring in our neighborhoods. So I would bring programs in where I'm sure that I would be in contact with our citizens. You know, we already have a vast amount of programs. We've got an extremely vast amount of programs that most people don't know about. I'm sure you know about the trust talks that we do, which are designed to build trust within our community. One of the first things that I'm planning on doing are trust talks involving the LGBTQIA+ community. I want to do trust talks with the Hispanic community as well as with the media, and I want to do trust talks with our youth that are out here, both at the high school level as well as the college level. And so I'll bring those programs in and start collaborating. I also feel like we need to, as a police department, we have, we exited the SRO program. So to get in with some of our children, I think we need to start a little bit earlier. And I'm talking about really before they actually arrive in middle school. We need to start talking to our kids while they're in elementary school at the time when they're being asked, what do you want to be? And start giving them that type of idea about what they want to be and letting them know that our kids should know that law enforcement is a viable professional career that is noble in its output, and have them learn to start being police officers. I also want to go into our schools at the high school level, and especially talking to the kids that are in the ROTC programs that plan to go to the military, to get them interested in law enforcement also. If they already have a desire to serve a community, then go into the military, serving 3 years after they're 17 or 18 years old, and coming within the police department, keeping in mind that in North Carolina, you cannot be a sworn officer until you're 21 years old. And so that would give them the military experience, give them the ability to come into our police department and continue serving their community as police officers.
I want to make sure I answer every point of that question. Can you repeat the question for me, Mr. Heck?
Yes, sir, thank you. If you are selected as the new chief of police, what new initiatives would you bring to our city to reduce crime, engage citizens, build trust, and support community programming?
Okay. So I was having this conversation with Mayor Pro Tem Dee Dee Adams prior to this forum. I think there's a lot of focus on bringing in something new when we've tried and been successful in having other programs in the past. What I'm talking about is especially when it comes to reducing violence. In the past, we had street crimes units that went out to the certain areas, certain communities. They established relationships with those communities. Those communities were then feeding information to our officers. Those officers were very proactive in their approach. They dealt with people that were dealing drugs, that were shooting people, that were involved in gun crime, involved in all sorts of nuisances to those specific communities. I can show you the data that goes from 2015 forward. That's when we changed the model of those teams. They started focusing on other areas other than that specific goal. From 2015 on, the murders go up from an average of 12 to about 18 to in the 20s. I'm talking about 26 to about 33. That is a model that has been proven. That model actually addresses the crime that is occurring now. We need to go back to that proactive community approach. It's much like we were doing that saturation patrol with the sheriff's office, if you guys remember. We touted that as a success. It's that model that we used to have. There's no need to bring in a new model when we know what actually works. The data is empirical, and there is absolutely no reason to go out and try something else when we know that this works. We need to get back to doing that type of police work and putting those that are shooting behind jail so that they can stay there. And then the second approach is addressing the community. We need to have a long-term growth. That's the tactical approach, right? Immediately addressing the immediate concern. But we also have a secondary plan to address the community. We need the community's help. We as a police department cannot stop the shooting by ourselves. We need everyone that's in here. We need your help. We need to mentor these children and catch them at an early age so that when they get older, they have alternatives. We do a great job with our gang steering committee right now. Our gang steering committee does a great job providing alternatives to at-risk youth, gang-involved youth. We need to expand that program so that it could be a youth steering committee. So every child that's out here that's identified at risk, we can go ahead and provide them with alternatives. But the only way that happens is if we collaborate with the community and the community reaches out to us. How do we establish that? We got to go back to the basics. Communication. I can't build a relationship with either one of you unless I am in front of you and have constant contact and we communicate and we continue that. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So there's quite a few things that I know that are working in this community already. I think the use of technology here is phenomenal. Your real-time crime center is absolutely cutting edge. I was up here a few weeks ago looking at that. We are working on that right now, trying to emulate what Winston-Salem is doing with data and with video and working with Fusus, and is an outstanding model. There are some things that I have built and I have put in place since I've been the chief in Danville, Virginia. A couple things I brought with me from Richmond and kind of rebranded, but a lot of things that through trial and error have worked in our community. It's reduced crime considerably. When we look at our crime in 2018 to our crime in 2022, our crime has been reduced by all violent crime by over 52%. Our levels of trust and legitimacy have grown tremendously in our community. And these are some of the things that I just want to hit on. So certainly not an all-encompassing list, but things that I truly believe that would work in our community. Once again, not reinventing the wheel, but evidence-based practices that will work in a city like Winston-Salem. So you have community policing here, but I would like to amp that up. Something called neighborhood-oriented policing, where we really tie lieutenants, tie supervisors to geographic areas, so we reduce down even what's going on in districts so that folks are even more connected to the communities they serve. Also, a component of that is called stratified policing. So it's a little bit like intelligence-led policing, but what it does is assign a crime functionary to every officer in the department. So from the chief all the way down to that line officer, detective, he or she has a role in the crime reduction process. Community walks, something I've been a believer in since about 2005 when we started those in the department I was in at the time. Every month we go out to a different community in Danville, Virginia, like we did in Richmond, Virginia, where we walk with our elected officials. We walk, most importantly, with our community members. We walk with folks that need us the most. I take a number of police officers out there, not just command staff members. I take a number of department heads out there with me, members of our fire department. Shelby, you've been out there with me before on community walks, right? Robert David, our director of Project Imagine, comes out there from time to time. We walk the neighborhoods, we knock on doors, and we talk to folks. So it's not just being there when you call us, it's finding out what you need. Sometimes we know there's barriers, right? You don't want to talk to the police. Sometimes there's a natural distrust of the police. If we get out there and kind of meet you on your own terms, I have found, been doing that for a lot of years, that is a big part of building that trust and legitimacy. I'm a huge fan of something called focused deterrence. If you've ever heard of Operation Ceasefire, which originated in Boston in the 90s, that's what focused deterrence is. All right, you take a little bit of cure violence, a little bit of things that you're already doing with credible messengers, all right, with folks that are already out in the community, and it's law enforcement working with other stakeholders to specifically focus on folks, on violent offenders, not just with sanctions, not just with arrest, but providing services, programs that build people up, that don't just incarcerate them. You have to do both. You can't just arrest the problem away. You got to build folks up, all right? You got to be a part of that. In line with that, something that we've worked on since 2018 in Danville is something called the Comprehensive Gang Model, which is based out of the National Gang Center. Considered a subject matter expert in that. with my partner who's here tonight, Robert David. I handle the law enforcement side. He looks at the services side through Project Imagine. And once again, like focused deterrence, it's focused sanctions on offenders who are pulling triggers and hurting people in the community, but also offering services to gang-affiliated youth, certainly before they get to that point. And that has also immensely contributed to reducing violence in our community. Something I do called the Community Leadership Immersion Program. Taekwon, I believe you are a graduate of that, sir. Post George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd in 2020, I was thinking about the gaps in police training. And I thought about how my officers go to a regional academy for about 20 weeks, then they go to field training for another 10 weeks, but there's no community-based training. So I work with a community member. I received some private funding that was donated to us, and instead of using that funding for, I think they actually originally wanted us to get some vests for canines, no offense to the canines, but I decided that I wanted to use that to create something that was going to bring our community closer to the people they serve. So we came up with the Community Leadership Immersion Program, which is a 4-week program that is led by the community, the voices of the community, talking to officers. They are from all over the community and telling these officers, these soon-to-be officers, how they want to be police, the level of trauma if they feel that's been inflicted on them in the past, how they need to be communicated with, the history of their communities. Many times you'll find police officers, regardless of if it's Richmond or Danville or Winston-Salem, we recruit officers from many different places. And sometimes they don't know the history and the flavor and the wants and needs of the community. This allows you all to educate your officers. And I'm a huge fan of that program. That's a keeper. I will take that regardless of anywhere I go. My officers will receive community-based training so they know what the community expects of them. Use of force has changed in the world of policing. A necessity for us is a de-escalation model. So whether you're looking at the Police Executive Research Forum's ICAT model, something that has worked for us, we've had full implementation since 2019. It's a different way for officers to look at force and to use force. Even if something is constitutionally permissible, there are things that you can do. There are communication tactics, use of cover, that officers can be taught that make them better police officers in the community. I know I've been talking for a while. The last thing that I really want to hit on that I truly believe that works for us is something we do called the heal and engage after recent trauma. And that is a model that is the police department, it's social services, it's mental health, other service providers. After there's a shooting, homicide, even a SWAT event in certain neighborhoods where the neighborhood has felt like it's been traumatized by either that specific violent event or loss of life, or sometimes just the nature of policing. We will go out within 24 to 72 hours of that incident as a collaborative team, once again, kind of like that community walk, knocking on doors and seeing what folks need. And that works for us, and I know I've been talking for a while, so thank you.
So I'm going to combine engaging citizens and building trust, because you build trust through communication, and that applies to both. Let me tell you what I would do as chief of police. I would organize a chief advisory board from the community. We don't need to wait every year for a community meeting. I need boots on the ground from the community telling me what's going on in the community, also holding me accountable for what I promised them. We're not waiting a whole bunch of time. We're not waiting for long periods of time. This board would meet with me quarterly and hold us accountable. Also, listening tours. This is nice as we sit before you telling you what we plan on doing, but sometimes we need to sit back and just listen. We need to hear what's going on from you all. So listening tours throughout the community to make sure you're being heard, and including what you say in my strategic plan. It's great for me to tell you what I want to do, but I need to hear from you so I can take it back and then come up with a strategy that you, who are my customers, who are my boss, want to hear. Also, I believe in meeting people where they are, and that's why you're going to listening tour, but also why you need to do something different. 2 years ago, I started what we call the transit talk, where I recognized that there were people in the community who couldn't make it to council meetings, who weren't heard. So I got on the city bus and rode around the city, and we talked. And we talked about what was going on in the community. They shared with me, and we took that back to the community. That's the type of innovation we need, and that's how we get all citizens involved in what's going on. Now, as far as new initiatives, I'm kind of a guy, I need acronyms to keep me on point. So the acronym is PIA. Remember that, PIA. PIA stands for Prevention, Intervention, and Apprehension. Now, I'm going to start with apprehension. I'm encouraged that everyone in this room knows that we have to do this together. We're going to have to attack the crime and some of the drivers of crime together. So under apprehension, that's where the police department, we take the lead. And as Chief Gomez talked about our real-time crime center, our shot spotter, we're using precision policing at this point. Traditional policing was there's a problem in the area, we'd rush in, we'd stop everything and move, and all we did was alienate the community that we were there to protect. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to use the infrastructures that exist today along with technology to go and get the problem out of the community and keep you on our side. That indeed is the apprehension part. Intervention, we need a safe place for people who want to stop the violence, who want to stop getting in trouble. We need an ability to be able to bring them in and get them jobs and resources so they stay on the right side. So I'm glad Chief Gomez mentioned the Gang Steering Committee. They're doing a wonderful job. But there's also some community-based organizations out there who are doing the same job. Let's get together, let's pool our resources and make sure that we're getting people everything they need. And now for the prevention. And normally when you hear a police officer talking about prevention, you're thinking about locking your doors and that. No, it goes way beyond that, folks. We got to talk about what's driving crime. We got to talk about poverty. We got to talk about lack of access. We got to talk about lack of connectivity. We have to talk about that because that's what's driving the crime. A Philadelphia experiment research showed that after COVID, the first thing our young folks did was started stealing cars. You know what happened in Winston-Salem once the schools shut down? Our kids started stealing cars and did over $1 million worth of damage. Same thing. Another research in Philadelphia said that when the Phillies, when the Flyers, when the 76ers, and the Eagles are in the playoffs, juvenile crime and crime in general went down. What's that tell you? Our kids need something to do, okay? That's what it says. Now real quickly, there's a term called lost learning. And some of you are shaking your head. In the summertime, our kids who don't have anything to do, they regress. All research says that our children learn at the same pace, but when they're not stimulated, they lose. Now, I've done some counting. This summer, taking away the first week after school and the 1 week before school, 2 days during the 4th of July. That's 43 days. Do we have 43 organizations between churches, between organizations, between fraternities and sororities who could sponsor one day to give our vulnerable children a curriculum so we get rid of this lost learning? I believe we can do it. I believe I'm the man that can pull it together, and that's an initiative I'd bring to the city if I'm chosen as chief.
Thank you for that. Our next question is by Vivian Perez Chandler.
Thank you all. Good evening, everyone. So this question is going to be specifically for two of you because we've heard already some of you answer this with the previous question. So we'll start with Chief Weaver, and then we'll go with Manny. So name one strategy that you created as assistant chief that helped to reduce crime.
One of the strategies that I've created to help reduce crime is we have placed our officers out in very visible positions. That's one of the things that I'm responsible for doing with crime. That also has to do with what we call our community priority patrol, which although I did not start it, we have used heavily to push people out in the neighborhoods so that our officers are out there talking to people and trying to figure out what's going on in the neighborhoods. Where we have requests for neighborhoods to have additional police presence, and that happens on about a daily basis where a neighborhood will contact us and say, we need to see the police a little bit more. That's not difficult for us to do, even though we're running those calls, 911 calls for service quite frequently. And keep in mind that especially after George Floyd occurred, in Winston-Salem, our calls for service actually increased. We have enough trust in our city that we had people actually calling the police more so that we could resolve some of the issues that they're having. And so placing those officers out in the streets, making them more visible, even though they are responding from call to call to call, we're trying to make sure that we can do everything we can. I have increased the number of vehicle stops that we've had, and that is so that we can not only deal with some of the stolen car issues that we're doing, but also to deal with some of the guns that are traveling around through our community. We all know that we have a gun violence issue, but the gun violence issue actually sits on four premises. First, suicides. We have that going on in Winston-Salem. The second one is domestic violence. We have domestic violence that's occurring with the firearms also. Third is everyday non-fatal shootings as well as homicides. That's the one that we hear about and the one we're so concerned about because in Winston-Salem, and I'm just being real with you, someone shot in our city about every day. The last one of the mass shootings, those are the ones that we actually get all of the attention to because of what's going on with the mass shootings across our country. So with that, our department is highly trained to respond, conduct all the necessary investigations that need to be conducted, but at the same time, if we have a crisis situation, which is a part of my specialty, we're able to go and appropriately have our officers respond, conduct the arrest, do what's necessary to make sure that we can restore order. Keep in mind, my professional specialty is response to, mitigation of, which means we fix whatever that problem is, and then recover from it. We have to go back out into the neighborhoods. As you know, when we're having these shootings, when our shot spotter gunshot detection system goes out, our officers are coming through the neighborhoods, talking to the residents to make sure that, one, no stray bullets have hit your homes or have come in through. Once we do that, we're also talking about other problems that may be going on within your neighborhood on those neighborhood canvases. And then we follow up with all of that with our community priority patrol where they come through the neighborhood and just check on our residents to ensure that our residents are okay, and if they have crime problems, then we can address them at that time. And so those are some of the things that I do as Chief over the Patrol and Special Operations Division to ensure that we are dealing with all of the problems that we're having related to gun violence. Keep in mind, we've got shooters out here, and we're doing everything we can from both the local, the state, and the federal level to put these shooters away, to have them incarcerated. Now, I know some of you may not be feeling that whole incarceration stuff, but let me explain it to you this way. When we're talking about violent crime and we're talking about people who are shooting, the tool that I have to stop shootings tonight is incarceration. We have programs that are working. You know, one that's coming online within the next few months is going to be the program related to cure violence. But I don't have time to wait 90 days for cure violence to speed up. I've got to do something about the shootings that are occurring tonight because people are being hurt, people are being killed, and that is incarceration. So we do a very good job on the investigations that we do, but we do need the community help from the aspect of we're not at every location and every location doesn't have a camera. So with that being the case, getting information, which is the reason that we're building trust within our community in the first place, is the reason that we're talking to our citizens. If we're building that trust, people give us information, and we've got to have information to solve these crimes. And so that's why we do the things that we do off the patrol division side and special operations division, is so that we can put these shooters away and lower the shootings that are going on in our city. And I believe if we keep doing that as chief of police, we will resolve some of the problem and drive the crime rate down. But it's going to start with making sure that we're protecting our citizens, our first priority.
Thank you.
All right, so one of the strategies, let me go ahead and say this. First of all, these strategies are put together by all the personnel that we work with. I can't take credit for these strategies that we've implemented. It takes the whole team in order to apply these. Specifically to the Criminal Intelligence Bureau, I lead that bureau. One strategy that we've put into place is the Violent Impact Player plan. So we call it the VIP. It's a model where we identify those that are committing violent crime. So how do we identify these people? We don't use a very subjective model like, hey, I know John Smith that he is shooting. We use empirical data. It is very important to us to identify these shooters. We use certain metrics so that we can identify them. That is their involvement, the type of crime that they've committed, so that we can say empirically through the data, hey, this person is out here committing chaos in the community. Once we identify that person, we also know through the data that there's a very small percentage of these folks out here that are committing an overwhelming amount of the crime that we are subjected to throughout all our communities. Once we identify them, we create a list, we talk about it, and we meet on a weekly basis in our Criminal Intelligence Bureau, in the RTCC, our Real-Time Crime Center, with all those teams that I talked to you that I'm over. We're sharing information. We'd like to think that we were sharing information before, but that's simply not the case, okay? We're siloed off depending on which unit you're assigned to. Now we're communicating, we're sharing this information, and we're targeting these folks that are committing the crime. We're then going out there and taking enforcement action to address the immediate problem. Now, we also have to think about the long term. Unfortunately, we need to create those systems and those initiatives where we invite the community in to help us on the long term. We're addressing the now because that's the problem right now. But if I get the position as the chief of police, that's got to be a priority. We have got to get you guys involved so that you can help us address the problem. We can address the now, but we need a long-term solution, because the now only does that, addresses the now. What happens when I put somebody in jail for being a shooter or a trigger puller? Somebody else is ready to step into that same role. And unless we stop that cycle, we're in that same repetitive motion over and over and over again. So we need every one of us to be involved to accomplish that.
Thank you. So we're going to jump, unless you all want to jump in right quick, to relationship building and have some questions around that. So Dr. Vereen has the first question in that category.
This is a two-part question, actually, and I'm going to direct it to Chief Booth. What is your approach to relationship building in the community, and who do you view as the key stakeholders for the new police chief, and how would you establish positive, productive relationships with them?
So great question, and good evening once again. So my approach is I want to talk to everybody. Can you all hear me? I must be talking. So my approach is I want to connect with everybody, sir. The key stakeholders are every community member. So obviously, faith leaders, obviously business leaders, all community leaders, all community members, regardless of you have a leadership position or you just live in your community, live in your neighborhood, you have to have a voice. Our elected officials, our appointed officials, our department heads, our nonprofits, all these folks work together, mental health practitioners, social services, everybody works together as far as reducing crime and preventing crime and making our community better. So I have to have a personal approach to them, a collaborative approach. That's the type of leader I have historically been, I will continue to be here in the city of Winston-Salem. We have to have everybody sitting at the table addressing these very complex problems. Gun violence, opioid addiction, substance abuse, issues of the unhoused, issues where our children don't have places to go. These are community problems that are about community building. So everybody has to have a seat at the table with that. I have a very personal approach, going to folks, see them where they live, meet them where they live. Like I talked about, that community walk, things like the listening session. Those are the things that we have to hear those voices. I believe I've answered the who. It's everybody. There's so many important voices that need to be heard in policing. To me, true community policing, and I believe in true community policing. And I will tell you, if you don't want true community policing here in the city of Winston-Salem, I'm absolutely not your person, all right? Absolutely not your person. Because I will tell you, I believe I built a true community policing model over the last 5 years. When we moved into our new headquarters in August of 22, after the old police department had been there for over 100 years in a municipal building, we called it One Community Way, because that's what I believe. All those voices matter. Everybody's there. The address of that building is One Community Way, because that is my philosophy when it comes to policing. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Booth. Okay, Chief Penn.
Okay, all right, thank you. I agree with Chief Booth on the who. So again, I wrote them down: elected officials, faith leaders, community, the businesses, juveniles, schools. That's the who. And guess what? I already have relationships with them. I'm an alpha man. I'm a scout master. I'm on the board of Habitat for Humanity, vice chair. I'm on the board for ESR. I'm in the community. I have the connections. I agree with community policing, but I'm ready to take it to the next level. And I'm talking about targeted community policing. We do a lot of community policing, talking, playing, hanging out with the community, and that's great for relationships. I'm talking about community policing that's gonna pull some people out of poverty, and I'm talking about directing our community policing towards education, towards jobs, towards getting our pulling our folks up. So some of this stuff is nice, but we got people in pain, and we got people hurting, and I need to work with you all. The police department can play a support role in bringing our folks up, and I know all of you care about it, and I do too.
Thank you. Pastor Lee.
All right, this question is going to go first towards Chief Assistant Weaver. The police department has a community engagement division. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The police department has a community engagement division that supports community activities and a gang task force. Would you support the ongoing work and resources for this division?
Oh, yes. And I believe you're talking about our Community Resources Unit, which actually contains Dr. Pam Peoples-Joyner, who's back in the back. She's over the gang steering committee. And what our Community Resources Unit did, and it's actually transitioned, is that they gave programs to communities requesting various types of crime prevention programs. And we've transitioned from that to our Community Resources Unit is actually out there trying to do some things about the problems that we're having in our community and trying to address those. We've got kids programs. We've got a wonderful relationship with Winston-Salem. I'm looking at Justin Gomez right now, and I have forgotten just been here. Winston-Salem Police Foundation. With our police foundation, we've been able to engage our kids in some of the athletics as well as some academics so that they can build their literacy. The police foundation has also been involved with Dr. Pam Peoples-Joyner in the Millennium Scholars Program, which is a program that I'd like to expand as chief of police, which was in Carver High School, where we can teach our people some life skills and also kind of try and, as possible, recruit them over to a profession of service in some manner, whether that's going to be in law enforcement or some other type. With that, I'd like to also mention, as Chief Penn mentioned, that I am a member of the board of directors for Smart Start of Forsyth County for senior services. I'm being recruited to be a board member for United Way, and with those organizations that are out here, the 501c3s, I'm able to talk to them about all of the different things that the police department is doing so that we can solve solve the problems we're having through the relationships that we have in Winston-Salem. I am a flagship class member of Leadership Winston-Salem, class of 2021. With all of the great leadership potential that we have in Winston-Salem, we can tackle these tough issues, whether that's these food deserts that are occurring all on the east side of US 52, some of the gun violence problems, some of the other things that are going on within Winston-Salem. The leadership that's there, we can put these people together, build some committees, and of course with the community's help, figure out what the community needs and attack those problems so that we can make it better. Yes, the Winston-Salem Police Department is into a literacy program. You've heard of our Sweet Reads truck that we deploy out where we're reading to the kids that are out here. Of course, literacy is not a traditional role for law enforcement, but we know within the Winston-Salem Police Department that as a tactical move, teaching our kids how to read will keep them out of the criminal justice system as they grow later on in life. You all know the relationship between third grade reading levels that our kids are not necessarily or always attaining, while at the same time, the deal with the third grade reading level is that there are formulas that determine how much prison bed space to use in future years because of our kids not reading at third grade reading level. And so as we're into the literacy as a law enforcement organization, we're trying from the tactical approach to make sure that our kids are out here understanding what's going on, can become academically successful, that they can be pursuing successful careers. And the way that helps us strategically in the long run is if we've got kids that are engaging in academics and are looking towards being productive members of society, those are kids we're not out here chasing. And we don't want to have to do that. We don't want to have to deal with them with the violent crime that's going on. And so that's why the Winston-Salem Police Department is so heavily invested in the literacy programs, because we want to work with the school system also. And I think I brought this up previously. As we got out of the SRO program, we're kind of away from what's going on with the schools. And we are losing a lot of valuable information as well as being able to help our kids, because kids talk while they're in school, they're Snapchatting and doing all of the rest of that, but we're losing that information because we don't have that pipeline of information. If we can build those relationships with our kids, have those kids start beginning to trust us more, then as they become adults and start having their own kids, and I've already seen this happen, they will start coming to us, giving us information, and we're able to do something about the crime that's going on in some of these neighborhoods.
Thank you. Addison has the next question.
I would like to ask this question to Assistant Chief Gomez. What aspects of community policing are most appropriate for Winston-Salem? And do you have community policing experience, especially as it relates to youth and parents?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part. As it relates to youth and parents. Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. So let me start off by saying community-oriented policing is the baseline for the Winston-Salem Police Department. We've been doing community-oriented policing since 1989. This is nothing new for the Winston-Salem Police Department. I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't a police officer in 1989. So the police department, it's ingrained in our culture. It's what we do. We know that we have to involve the community. It's all we do. As a matter of fact, we've been recognized nationally for our COPS model, okay? That's the Winston-Salem Police Department that I work on. So what experience do I have with community-oriented policing? It's my whole policing career, 24 years. Everything that we do is with the community in mind. We reach out to the community on a regular basis, whether it's trust talks or sweet reads, as Chief Weaver just mentioned. We do that on a regular basis. Not only do we do that internally, but we create partnerships so that we can reach out further. As he mentioned, the Winston-Salem Police Foundation, we have several members, and the president here, Mr. Scott Somerville, Justin Gomez, and I think I saw Nancy. They are great advocates of our instilling this community-oriented policing model so that we can create those experiences with the kids. Now, from my perspective, I go out and we volunteer in the community. We've done the trunk or treats. We do all sorts of special events that we all go to ensure that we're in the community and that we're reaching out to kids and parents. From my perspective, we need to be completely inclusive. We need to be culturally competent. And what I'm talking about that is we tend to reach out to certain communities. We tend to reach out to the English-speaking communities. Yo hablo español y también me gustaría a la comunidad hispana que ellos sean parte de esta conversación. Just said that I would want to reach out to the Hispanic population, and they need to be a part of this conversation too. We need to spread some resources to that community as well. So, with my ability to speak the Spanish language, it's my native language, I feel that I can bridge that gap. So those are key components that we can use so that we can bring in this piece of that community. Not only the Hispanic community and our English-speaking community, we have a large immigrant community here in Winston-Salem. If you don't know, look it up. We have a large immigration population, not just Spanish-speaking. Karini, we can go on. My wife is English as second language teacher with the Winston-Salem Forsyth County school system. I'm telling you, we have a large population that's an immigrant community, and we need to be inclusive of them as well when we talk about community-oriented policing.
Thank you, Chief Gomez. I think I'm going to jump to mental health because we heard a lot about mental health in some of our community input sessions. And so Andy Hagler will ask a question.
Thank you. I'd like to initiate this question to Chief Booth, but then I would like for the others to also share a few minutes as well for their comments. Mental illness affects 20% of the population, and about half of that 20% live with serious mental illnesses that usually co-occurs with substance use, homelessness, and it doesn't matter who you are, where you live, how rich, how poor, documented, undocumented. So with that said, how supportive are you of trainings and programs such as Crisis Intervention Team, Mental Health First Aid, and other initiatives? What is the value that you see in these trainings and programs? And if you are selected as the chief of police, are you willing to serve or designate a staff in an advisory role within the mental health community, such as mental health collaboratives, to really work towards problem solving and decriminalizing mental illness?
So thank you. Very thoughtful question and a very relevant question. So a little bit about Virginia. Obviously is not North Carolina, but in 2018 a young man named Marcus Peters was killed in Richmond, Virginia. Marcus was going through a mental health crisis in April of 2018, responding Richmond police officers. He was running naked on Interstate 95. Responding Richmond police officers were not equipped to handle Marcus's level of trauma, and he was shot and killed. The next year, Marcus's family worked with the state legislature to pass the Marcus Peters Act, the Marcus Peters Alert. So agencies started working on how we get better at responding to those in crisis, specifically mental health crisis. In Danville, we're working on a co-responder unit. All right, we're going to have 4 officers partnered with mental health practitioners 24/7, where they're going to respond effectively to people in crisis. As police officers, and you've heard a lot of these questions tonight, have really gotten beyond policing. When we talk about teaching kids to read, when we talk about giving kids places to go, when we talk about substance abuse, these are big issues, and mental health is one of the biggest. So we have to work with our partners, specifically our mental health practitioners, to build models that work for the community and keep tragedies like the aforementioned tragedy with Marcus Peters from happening. Besides the co-responder model, which I would build, if you look at Greensboro, I believe they have 9 full-time officers respond to their co-responder model. I believe, don't misquote me, I think it's upward of that range. build a co-responder model. But one of the most critical pieces of training that's out there is CIT training. And in Richmond, Virginia, we had CIT training, mandatory 40 hours of crisis intervention training for all 750 for our officers. As a member of the command staff, I led the charge on that. As a chief of police in the DC metro area, all my officers had that CIT training as mandatory training. It made us better. And in Danville, Virginia, we had that same CIT training, so officers that can respond to folks in mental health crisis can effectively communicate with them. Without that training, sometimes it's impossible to effectively handle that situation. That's why you see so many horrible instances where officers have used force, specifically deadly force, against folks that are hurting, that folks that are experiencing trauma because they haven't been trained properly. So I think your last piece of the question was, would I support the expansion of that in regards to mental health? And that is with a resounding yes.
I'll go next. So here in Winston-Salem, I am one of the instructors in our crisis intervention team training. We've been doing crisis intervention team training since 2007. And not only are we doing it with our sworn personnel, but we're doing it with the first points of contact, the communications operators. We're putting them through the crisis intervention team training so that when they are receiving these calls from either people that are in mental health crisis or family members of someone in that crisis, the first point of contact can gather the correct information, give that information to the officers as they're responding, and hopefully that will help us to be able to respond appropriately and not utilize force inappropriately. You know, we're talking about people with mental illness that are sick. These are not criminals. These are people that are not trying to hurt us. Even though they may be violent, they're not intentionally trying to hurt us. And with that being the case, we want to get them the help that they need, the attention that they need, the resources that they need to try and assist them. With the families that are dealing with people that are in mental health crisis, they have to have some sort of resources that we try and give. We can utilize resources such as the Mental Health Association of Forsyth County, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is called NAMI, to get them that help. We're about to bring online for the city of Winston-Salem what we call the BEAR team, B-E-A-R, Behavioral Evaluation and Response Team. That program, because of what the citizens requested, will not be run by the police department. It's actually going to be run by the fire department. And because it's run by the fire department, we all know that sometimes when people are facing mental illness and the uniform of a police officer shows up, that escalates the problem as opposed to de-escalating it. And what we're trying to do through that CIT training, it teaches definitively how to de-escalate situations so that we can calm people down and try and get them the actual help that they need, the medical help that they need, as opposed to having to deal with use of force issues and things along those lines. So with that, we've got mental illness training that's out here. WSPD is on a pathway to training every officer within our agency in crisis intervention training, and we're hoping that that will further reduce any type of use of force incidents that we may have with people suffering from mental illness.
Let me just add real quick, Andy, that this is such a serious topic and such a serious initiative by the city of Winston-Salem, not only the police department, that they have outlined CIT training for 100% compliance for all our officers in their strategic plan moving forward. So I think it's imperative that the community understands that it's not just the police department, but this is a driver by the city of Winston-Salem.
My colleagues pretty much answered the question. That's what happens when you go last. But I just want to say this. I just want to say this. Compassion, dignity, and respect. That's the foundation of what your interaction will be with the Winston-Salem Police Department. So whether it's homelessness, whether it's mental illness, whether it's my cat's in a tree, companion, dignity, and respect. We've been filling in the gaps far too long when it comes to mental illness, and I'm excited about the co-response response, because what it's going to allow us to do is get the scene secure and allow the folks to give whoever's on the other side of that call the best care that's needed. And that's what we should be about, receiving the best care for our citizens.
Thank you. Now we'll transition to youth violence, and Addison has the first question.
I'd like to direct this question to Assistant Chief Penn. As chief, you received several calls from the community expressing their concerns about increased crime rates and the continuous violent crime with a growing increase by young people. What is your response to these calls?
It goes back to my PIA. It's prevention, intervention, apprehension. Again, I would let the community know, because sometimes we lose sight of it. There are 390 million civilian guns in the United States. It's estimated there's 330 million people in the United States. So for every 100 folks, there's 120 guns. Now, there's also something called ghost guns, which are firearm frames with no serial numbers that folks can easily get a hold of and build a gun. Those are the facts. That's why the prevention piece and working as a support is so very important. It's been stated up here before, we can't keep arresting ourselves out of the problems. Police department been doing that for years, and we're still here. Intervention, working with the community-based organizations who are walking the streets. Again, recognizing that the police department can't do it all, but we can be a support role with our juveniles. We also have to get our other partners in on this. I need juvenile intake to come up with alternatives to do with our juveniles besides letting them go home if there's no structure at home or going to a juvenile detention center. We need something in between so that we can give our kids the best care possible. Like this, all right, good.
Okay, the next question is Dr. Vereen.
I'm going to direct this question to Chief Gomez. Since the start of the year, we've had 6 homicides, including the death of a 12-year-old child in a park. What is your strategy to address the recent increased gun violence and gangs in the city?
Thank you for the question, sir. I think I've addressed this already, right? So we need to use and incorporate a couple things: the community, technology, and then finally the approach that I talked about. We need to have a tactical approach and a strategic approach. The tactical is the now. What do we do now? Right? That's pretty simple. We identify those shooters. We identify people that are involved in this type of activity. Technology. Where does technology come in? Technology is huge. There's software out there that can help us identify with artificial intelligence these types of conversation that are happening out there on the open World Wide Web. And it's out there because people are just putting it out there. We can use this technology to identify and predict these type of incidents. We don't have that technology, but we need to have conversations as to how we acquire that technology to ensure that we can hub it in the real-time crime center so we identify these potential solutions. I guarantee you that that fight that occurred at that park was talked about on some type of social media network prior to that event occurring. Had we had a heads up or a couple days, a couple hours notice, we could have deployed personnel appropriately, and that's what I'm talking about, intelligence-led policing. We get the information, whether it's from a human being or from this artificial intelligence, so that we can deploy our personnel out there. The long-term strategic portion of that. We have got to get buy-in from the community. We have got to do the steering committee for the youth. There's a bunch of gang members that were involved in all sorts of crimes, right? We do a very good job of identifying them and trying to provide them with alternatives. We need to do that for every single youth member of our community that's out there that's potentially not involved in crimes, but is getting ready to. I live in the South, fixing to, right? We need to address that portion of the community before they get into dealing with us on a level that they don't want to be dealing with, and that's where these partnerships are critical.
Thank you. Let's move on to diversity, equity, and inclusion category. The first question in that category is from Vivian.
This question is for Chief Booth. What commitment or strategy would you take or make to ensure that our non-English speaking community members feel protected, safe, and able to trust the Winston-Salem Department?
All right. Good evening again. It's a great question. I think the way you do that is a couple things. You have to work hard to recruit officers from those communities that feel like they are not being heard, that feel like they don't have a voice when it comes to policing, that feel like they don't have a voice when it comes to the response of their police department. Those things that I talked about, those community walks, those are key. And we know there's a different level of comfort when they see the police in their community, but we have to build that model. We have to go to them and build a model where they will feel heard, and we can focus on those problems that have probably gone unheard before. As a precinct commander in the 2nd Precinct in South Richmond, I had a large Hispanic population. My wife, who's here tonight, I had to give her a shout out, was the first Hispanic liaison officer for the Richmond Police Department. So working with her, we were able to build bridges in that community, a community that historically had unheard of levels of trust. And we have to really go to them where they feel comfortable with us, and we have to use some non-traditional things. All right, we have to break down those barriers. Maybe we don't wear a uniform. We go to those community meetings, and I believe that is one thing that when we were in South Richmond, many times they wanted officers out of uniform because they did not feel comfortable connecting with us. And that's something, a cultural piece that we have to work on the police department, because we know we get tied to these icons, policing, we want to wear those uniforms, but guess what? If it's a service, if it's making our community feel more comfortable, then it's okay for us to change. So I think those are all things that we would do. One of the biggest ways to knock down those barriers is to really work on that recruitment, to get more officers that are reflective of the community they serve, and that's regardless of the community. Our police department should very much look like the community it serves. Knock down those barriers. We need more female officers. We need more African-American officers, more Hispanic officers. It needs to be reflective, and that's really how you break down those barriers and make a community better, and that's really true community policing.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Dr. Vereen.
Residents in a generationally, academically, and ethnically diverse community routinely discuss their concerns about uninhabitable, boarded-up homes and what appears to be open-air, low-level drug dealing within their community. This community includes homeowners who have recently purchased and many who have owned their family homes for many years. During your first council meeting, several residents voiced their concerns to the city council. Describe potential steps to be taken and how collaborative partnership with residents and local nonprofit partners might play a part in addressing these concerns. And this is for Chief Weaver.
So I've been in actual community meetings where this topic has come up. Matter of fact, not too long ago, Councilmember Scipio and I were at a community meeting where the residents were talking about some of the vacant homes that are occurring. The problem that we're having with the vacant homes is that we've got people that are homeless that may be living in them. We've got kids that are playing in those vacant houses. We've also got people that are utilizing those structures to take dope. With that being the case, one of the first things that I did as we were hearing about that specific problem was contacted our community development division of the city of Winston-Salem, where they have zoning inspectors that can go out, look at those properties, and they will start taking positive measures to either board the home up or contact the actual property owner and have the property owner start boarding that house up immediately so that they're secure. Just 2 weeks ago, we had one of our officers who was working in an undercover capacity watch a guy come down the street with a gun in his hand running. He ran into a vacant house that was open with all the windows broken out of it, the door standing wide open. As that subject went in the house, our officer was watching him. He came out, and he actually shot at our officer, although he didn't hit our officer or the vehicle he was in. And then our officer ran up on him with the vehicle, and then got out and they engaged in a foot pursuit, and we were able to catch that subject who still had the gun. We recovered the gun. That was because he was able to hide in a vacant house for a short period of time, getting away from whoever he was running from. Well, as I went out there to figure out exactly where that house was on 23rd Street, the bus was letting out and kids were coming down the street, walking down the street right in front of that house. So I immediately sent an email to our community development department so that they could see the house, the condition it was in, and send someone out immediately to start trying to address that. And that's exactly what happened. And so what we want to do is make sure that with all of these vacant houses, and you know there are some complications that occur with those. You end up having houses where the resident has actually died. It's gone over into being heir property where their heirs have that property, and it causes us some issues. But because of all of the different things that have occurred in some of these houses, especially in the wintertime when people go into them for shelter and end up burning the house down, and sometimes themselves, we have to attack that problem in our neighborhoods so that the blight that's occurring in those neighborhoods is taken out. The city has a very robust policy of determining when we have vacant homes like that where they are beyond the value of the home, and we'll demolish those homes just to clear the property out so that we don't have to worry about it causing any other type of community hazard. And so, once again, as Chief Gomez said when we're talking about the diversity, the thing about Winston-Salem is we are a wonderfully diverse community. With us being diverse, we can always move into the stage of being what's called a collaborative city. Our diversity is our strength. Being a collaborative city means that we can tackle all of the problems with citizens just like you are out here tonight who are interested in serving their community. We can go out, have community meetings, and do something about the problems that are going on and have good collaboration. Keep in mind, our city mothers and fathers over 100 years ago determined that our city model would be Urbs Condita Aduivando, which means a city founded upon cooperation. With us cooperating with each other, that is not just a motto, that's the expectation that we're always going to collaborate with each other to have long-term solutions to the problem in our community, and that's our ultimate goal, is to have that long-term solution so we don't end up going back and having the same problems that we've had out of the same type of circumstance.
Thank you. Vivian.
This question is for Assistant Chief Penn. You have received both internal and external complaints about sworn and civilian police department staff who have made inappropriate comments about people with lower education levels, expressions of their individual political views, inappropriate racial, ethnic, gender, and LGBTQ community-related comments. Describe your approach to addressing these issues with staff, and what are your plans for building racial awareness to eliminate bias in policing? That was a long one, so if you need me to repeat anything.
I may take you up on that. Compassion, dignity, and respect is the foundation upon which your interaction with the Winston-Salem Police Department will be and will always be. Those complaints will be taken extremely serious. They will be investigated. They will be investigated fairly using procedural justice, which is an internal principle as well as an external principle. And if indeed found to be true, they will be dealt with decisively based on our rules of conduct. We train on cultural competency, implicit bias, and we do that on a yearly basis because that's not a one and done. However, we also hire people and we look at their hearts and we look at their social media and we call everybody they know, everybody they told us they know, and even people they don't think we know, so that we avoid this issue. Building trust with you all is number one on our priority list. And comments like that, behaviors like that, deteriorate what we're trying to accomplish here. So there'll be training, but there'll also be accountability if anybody knew they're doing it. We have to make sure, I want to make sure that the community knows that it's not just the person committing the act that will be dealt with the Winston-Salem Police Department. Failure to intervene will also you will be held accountable with the Winston-Salem Police Department.
Thank you. So let's shift gears and talk a little bit about retention and recruitment efforts. And so Pastor Lee has a question in that category.
Yes, this question is for Lieutenant Gomez. Describe how you will include a community in the city strategy to recruit and retain skilled police officers.
Absolutely. So, thank you for the question. I like to call the vast majority of you the silent majority. You guys support us. You guys show up for us. You guys show our police officers the love that they deserve, want, and need. We are no different than you guys. We're human beings, and at the end of the day, if we are vilified, then we have the problem that we have right now, where we don't have applicants to fill the role because they would rather go out and do something else where they're not going to be vilified. Everybody within the police department knows that what happened in 2020 to George Floyd was a murder. Everybody within the police department accepts that. But we are judged by the actions of certain officers or individuals that took those actions. We need the support from the community. My strategy is to create, I'm going to go back to the basics. I'm a huge, let's go back to the basics, guys. We need to have communication with the community and express to you guys what we need. We need your support. I need a list of every single community, every church, every community organization that we have out here, and I'm going to check off every block when I come and visit you and have that one-on-one so we can build that communication, that trust, that we can have that communication so that you guys can go out here and express your thanks to our police officers, our men and women that are out here doing the job day in and day out, putting their lives on the line for this job. They leave their families during holidays and birthdays to do this job. They don't do it for the paycheck. They do it for the love. They do it for the calling. But we need your support. That is the community outreach that we need. We need the community to tell our guys that they are supported. Once we have that and we change the narrative, I'm not saying, and you guys have heard Chief Thompson in the past say this, I don't want blind allegiance. Nobody wants that. When an incident happens, you've heard it here, we hold people accountable. We hold our personnel accountable, but we ask that you provide us the opportunity so we can conduct an investigation. But at the end of the day, the actions of one do not represent the actions of the many. I promise you that the men and women of the Winston-Salem Police Department need your support. If nothing else comes out of tonight, please hear that loud and clear. That is the way we get out of the recruiting and retention situation that we're in, is with your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy.
Thank you. And we'll start with Assistant Chief Gomez and then go down the line. But with 100+ police officers short, and as neighboring cities and counties continue to offer larger police salaries, what is your strategy to address recruitment and retention of police officers, and in particular, so that they do reflect the diversity of the city of Winston-Salem?
Yes, sir. So we're 141 officers short, right? It doesn't just affect our officers, it also affects our non-sworn staff. We are 49 or 50 positions short, okay, depending on which report you look at. So respectively, 27% and 28% short. That is a huge deficit, okay? I am a firm believer that we need to increase morale internally. How do we increase morale internally? As the chief of police, you have to be available. We do an awesome job of going out to the community and interacting with the community and speaking at community events. We do coffee with a cop. We do all these events, but we've not done coffee with a chief. We need to be available to our personnel. Our personnel need to see us, and that's an expectation from the chief level all the way down to the first line supervisor, which is a sergeant. We need to communicate that expectation clearly, that we need to be available and need to be there. They need to see this. Again, going back to communication. We build bridges with communications. The research is very clear on this. People will do jobs that they are called to do when they feel respected, when they feel like they're being a contributor to that agency. They will stay even if they're not making what they're supposed to be making. Having said that, we do need to have a package that's commensurate to the job that they do. We need to show them some appreciation. So it's twofold: morale and provide them with a benefits package. We need to be the employer of choice. I said this earlier in a conversation today where I have a cousin that's a one-upper, right? I get a shiny phone and he's gonna one-up me and get a newer phone, right? That's what's happening right now with law enforcement. Everybody knows that nobody wants to do the job, so we're working on taking each other's officers from one agency to the next, and we do that by the benefits package and pay. We need to, as a city, get serious, get together, look at this benefit package, and set the bar so high for our sworn and non-sworn personnel that people see us as the employer of choice. That, coupled with the morale that I'm talking about, will make people want to work for us.
Chief Booth.
So let me add this. As Chief Gomez mentioned, employer of choice, literally about 3 weeks ago when Greensboro installed their new chief, Chief John Thompson, I heard him doing a media interview where he said that the Greensboro Police Department hopes to be the employer of choice in law enforcement in this region. Let's be honest with you. We are tapped out when it comes to the persons that are in this area as far as becoming law enforcement officers, because you've got Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem, Durham, Raleigh, Charlotte, North Carolina Highway Patrol, all looking at the same pool of people trying to get them into their law enforcement agencies. And we're actually robbing Peter to pay Paul. We'll lose people to Greensboro, we'll lose people to High Point, we'll lose people to the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. Every once in a while we'll have people come back to us or ask to come back. And so with that, we do have to add a benefits package that is competitive, keeping in mind that when Winston-Salem raises their rates, so does everybody else around. And I mean, it just becomes a round robin of everybody trying to do it. Law enforcement officers, especially with the skills that they have coming out of the Winston-Salem Police Department, everybody in the state knows that we give exceptional training. But the other part of that is living in our city, and I'll just be honest with you, there's nothing going on in Winston-Salem that's not going on in any major city in this country. With that being the case, they know that our officers have a wealth of law enforcement experience. They've been trained well, and so people come after our folks. That's up to and including state and federal agencies that come after our folks. So we have got to do things and have a benefits package that's well enough that will keep our people here, so that as we discussed being the employer of choice, literally city of Winston-Salem was doing that 20 years ago. And somehow or another we got away from it, but that's a part of one of the things we're gonna have to go back to, knowing that when we raise our rates, other cities around us are going to raise their rates also, just trying to remain competitive.
So I won't add too much to the employee of choice. That goes without saying. Both of these gentlemen have answered that. We have to have the best pay, the best training, the best benefits for the region. 141 vacancies. We have to get us there. All right, if you want to retain these great officers that we have and bring more in, especially that are reflective of our community, that's got to be our baseline. But there's some other things. Officers want to be heard. They want to be appreciated. Focus groups, you got to let officers be a part of the process. You have to listen to them. You have to bring them in when you talk about policing strategies. These officers that are out here in the 3 districts in Winston-Salem, they know what works many times in their communities, in their neighborhoods to solve crime. And you have to get them involved in the decision-making process and make them feel like they're being heard. Just like all of you all here tonight, you're both formal and informal leaders. You want to be heard. That's why you're here. Officers want to be heard as well. They want to be an active part of the process. Pay, research has shown, is a job dissatisfier, not a job satisfier. So if I'm unhappy with my pay, but I'm happy with other parts of my work, I'll still stay there. Every police officer, certainly everybody sitting up here with me tonight, came to this job 38, 21, 24, 28 years ago because they wanted to have a powerful impact in the community, and you've heard that they love. That's why they're here. Most officers, that's why they come and do the job. It allows them to have a direct impact in a community. In addition to making them a part of the process, you have to build a brand that separates us, and a brand for the police department. When you talk about community-oriented policing since 1989, that is awesome. We need to embrace that. We need to take that to the next level. And when folks think of the Winston-Salem Police Department, all right, when they're in college, when they're in high school, and they want to be a part of a law enforcement agency, all right, they want to come to the Winston-Salem Police Department because they're going to be a part of a team that is impacting a community, that's impacting a diverse community, that has voices that we listen to. We're using procedural justice, and we're making it better. And there's a lot of departments out there that aren't doing that. And I will tell you, one of the attractions in my current agencies for officers, for retention and recruitment, is because folks tell me they want to be a part of positive change. They want to be a part of a community, a department that is reflective of them, that hears them, and they can make better. And if you build that brand and do those other things, we will recruit and retain, and we will shrink that 141 officers plus professional staff quickly because they want to be a part of that. You reduce crime. You listen to folks. Folks want to be a part of the winning team. And we'll build that in the Winston-Salem Police Department. That is also how we reduce those vacancies.
Yes, all of that. We have to do things differently in Winston-Salem. Years ago, you used to be able to sit back and sanitation would come behind your house and grab your trash can from you and then take it out to the truck and bring it back, right? Well, what we learned is as times change, we can't continue to do things the same way. We didn't like it, but we dealt with it, and we're working through it now. We can't go to every single call like we used to. Now, with that said, there's still services provided for you. We have a method where you can make reports over the phone. We're working now on a self-reporting system for minor crimes that some of you folks who you know technology and you're savvy with that, you'll be able to do that. That's going to take the load off some of those very committed officers who stayed with us. So that's one way to help on the retention. We talked about what the community can do, and we talked about support. Well, you can do more than that. You can go out and you can tell people the caliber of agency the Winston-Salem Police Department is, and you can send us in this direction. Think about the last time you talked to somebody about doing a noble job like working for the Winston-Salem Police Department. Also, we talked about stakeholders earlier. Our stakeholders include our business, and that's marketing firms. As chief, I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask for their expertise. I'm going to ask for your expertise. You remember that chief advisory board I talked about from the community? I'm going to ask for ideas. Also, we need to rebrand. We need to explain that this is a challenging job, but it's a rewarding job. And people will step up when you tell them that. Also, remember, 51% of the American population is female. However, 12% of law enforcement is female. What that tells me, there's a huge market to tap into. So what we have to do is make it more attractive for all of you. But it, again, you've heard it once, you've heard it twice, you've heard it 3 times. It's going to take collaboration, and we're going to have to partner on fixing these issues. We need your help on this.
Thank you. So we're going to move to the last question in the category of technology. And Addison's going to ask that question.
I'd like to ask this question to Chief Booth, but this can be answered by everyone. How do you remain current and ensure your agency is employing the most current policing practices and using the latest technologies in your current role?
So, great question. Technology is something that you're already doing phenomenally well here in Winston-Salem, and in my current agency, I'm working on doing that even better. The way that I stay connected is I work with groups like the International Associations of Chiefs of Police, the Police Executive Research Forum, the Virginia Chiefs currently, all these thought leaders in my field, as well as the academic community. All right, long-time student, for longer than I'd like to say. I developed many relationships in the academic community over the years. They've helped me to refine how I look at policing, how I look at the role of the police department, and as a big part of it. Technology really has changed the game on policing that is allowing us to do so much more now that we couldn't. You've heard so much more, so much from the panel tonight up here with me, the candidates, about the real-time crime center and how we're effectively responding to crime as it occurs. That is so important. But technology can also be harnessed for other things. Technology can also be harnessed to increase trust and legitimacy in the community. All right, when you look at community surveys, when you look at ways that you can evaluate officers, there's proponents, there's vendors out there like Guardian Score, which allow us to rate officers as they respond to the community, to issues in the community based off the tenets of procedural justice. And those are things that our community members want. They want to be able to evaluate officers, and also that's data that we want, because we're hearing all the great things that the Winston-Salem Police Department is doing, and we know all the great things that the Winston-Salem Police Department is going to do. So technology like that is quickly becoming best practices, and that will allow us to harness that to illustrate to our community what we're doing, but also allow them to be heard. Also allow some of those aforementioned communities that maybe don't feel comfortable having that direct confrontation or communication with an officer, allow us to hear their input. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to concur with Chief. I do my research in the same place he does, but I also have connections across the nation with other law enforcement agencies. So those relationships really help shape where we're going with technology. I also want to make it a point that we also, the police department has for years kind of worked in silos where we handle everything. We're going to have to step out of that, and we've already been working with our city IT department, which has been incredible, and it's a long time coming, but we're going to have to reach across the aisle too, and some of our professional IT who do R&D, see what they can do to help us give you a better product. Also, anytime we start talking about technology, I have learned that it's extremely important to communicate that with the citizens. They need to know the type of technology we're using and why. Because when people get upset when they think Big Brother's watching, and so it's important for us to communicate with you all and let you know that what we're doing is on the up and up, and so that we can get your buy-in in what we do.
Okay, so let me speak about technology. Technology is hubbed in the real-time crime center at the police department. We use it for a bunch of different other things, not just policing. But let me tell you about what we at the police department see technology moving forward toward. I myself canceled a trip to Baltimore to view their drone as a first responder program. Why is that important? A drone can respond immediately to a call for service. Let me give you an example. Unfortunately, there was a juvenile that was playing with a cap gun, a toy gun in Cleveland. Officer went, and unfortunately, there was an officer involved shooting where that juvenile was killed. Tragic, tragic event. Insert the drone as a first responder program. We get that call for service. That drone gets there before the police get there. Now we're able to relay live time information to our officer to what to de-escalate this situation. De-escalation comes in many different ways. It comes in the training that we receive through crisis intervention. It comes in the ICAP form, but it also comes in the way of technology. Technology is a huge advancement for us. City Council just approved Live 911, which we're hoping to go live with here within the next month. That's going to afford us the availability to the beat officer that's responding to the call for service to any location to hear a 911 caller. What does that do for us? That allows that officer to make a informed decision whether to respond in an emergency fashion or not prior to that call for service even being entered into our CAD system and being dispatched. Shaves minutes, saves lives. That officer can make that determination now. So we need to continue to layer technology upon technology because it works from one aspect to the next. Our license plate readers, this is what Chief Penn was speaking about a minute ago. We had to do a lot of information sessions to make sure that the public was okay with that. It's a great piece of technology. It's going to help us solve crimes. That's ultimately what we all want. But we had to assure everyone that, hey, these license plate readers will be used in these circumstances, and they will not be used arbitrarily to write you a speeding ticket, to make sure you're stopping at a stop sign. Those other things that really are not the key focus of those type of technologies. So communication, but we need to incorporate it. It is huge. That is the way that policing is going moving forward.
Keep in mind that in Winston-Salem, we've got 5 colleges or universities. There's Sci Tech, we've got Salem College, the UNC School of the Arts, Wake Forest University, and Winston-Salem State University. With those colleges, they all have partnerships which end up down here in our Innovation Quarter, used to be called Piedmont Triad Research Park. And the goal of the Piedmont Triad Research Park when it was first initiated was to be the largest urban area research park in North America. With that, there's a lot of technology that's there. There's a lot of people that can help us with our technology, and tapping into those academic institutions to talk to us about technology, help us evaluate the technology is always going to be a good thing. As we've talked about, you know that we have our Axon body-worn camera system. Chief Gomez has talked about drone as first responder. We're developing networks through our real-time crime center to put cameras up in as much of the city as possible so that we're able to see the video of what's going on in some of these communities, plus between our real-time crime center being able to push that video out, it can actually go to the car computers that our officers are seeing. So as we're talking about being able to respond to those calls, being able to de-escalate situations because we can see what's going on there, and our officers be able to develop their tactics and determine exactly how they need to approach people, that's always going to be a good advantage for us. So it's going to make things safer as far as for our citizens as well as for our law enforcement officers when they're responding to these calls for service. Thank you.
Thank you all. Any last final burning questions? Okay. Dr. Vereen?
Just one. I want to, on behalf of the Ministers' Conference in Winston-Salem and vicinity, I want to invite you all to be a part of our meetings, which are Tuesdays at 11 a.m., and we would certainly love if a representative of the police department, we do have Dr. Pam Peoples-Joyner with us, but we would love to have someone from the patrol division to be a part of those meetings to kind of give us some type of report every Tuesday on the statuses of our communities here in Winston-Salem.
Yes, sir.
Well, certainly thank you all for answering those questions. Thank you to the community for coming out. Please, let's give a hand for our community panelists. You all will stand up. Thank you all so much. Thank you to our finalists. Didn't we do a good job of selecting the final four? What do y'all think? There will be an opportunity, Frank, on the city's website to give additional feedback if you would like to, cityofwinston-salem.org. We would love to hear from you. We will get more input from our community panel on their observations. They took great notes. And hopefully by next week, we will have selected our next police chief if all goes well. So that's really fast, but hopefully next week we will hear who our next police chief is, and it'll be someone up here on this panel. So thank you all so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you all for your participation.